Super, thanks. Well, I think more people will be joining. So welcome everyone. My name is Elizabeth Boltz. I'm the trustee for the Northern California chapter of ASLA. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for what we hope is the first in a series of presentation events on climate action. So we can pull up the agenda. So yeah, great. Our star has just joined. So as you know, at the 2022 Conference on Landscape Architecture in San Francisco, ASLA rolled out their ambitious climate action plan with a bold vision for 2040. So today we aim to share this message with you by learning from national leadership about the progress that's been made. And also we'll conclude with this meetup with a presentation of local chapter initiatives. So that's our agenda. If we go to the next slide and see who we are. So our local chapter formed a committee last year to brainstorm ideas about how to exchange knowledge with each other and with the broader community. And we are so fortunate to have the dedication and commitment of Amy, Vanessa, April, Justin, Mariana, and Sharka working on these objectives. And we'd love to grow. So please feel free to reach out to any of us if you'd like to join this chapter committee, or get in touch with our executive director and superstar, Laura Lohr, who sent you the invitation and the link to this Zoom. So our next slide. Great. I am thrilled to introduce Torey Carter-Conneen, who joined ASLA as Chief Executive Officer in 2020. Under his impactful leadership, our national professional organization has truly thrived. Torey will review ASLA's strategic plan and the development of the Climate Action Plan and report on ASLA's participation in the recent United Nations Conference on Climate Change. So exciting. Equally thrilled to welcome April Phillips, our longtime Northern California chapter member and leader and principal of APDW and chair of the National Biodiversity and Climate Action Committee. So April will update us on plan implementation and resources and engagement strategies. Just a reminder, if everybody could mute, or we'll mute you for you. So thank you both, Torey and April, and over to you, Torey. So glad you could join.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's good to see, I can see some of you. Okay, who's controlling the slide deck here? Is it me or?
Amy's forwarding the slides.
Okay, so do you want me to give you a thumbs up, or I can't see you, Amy. Let me see if I can find Amy.
You see me yet?
I'm gonna find you in the, there you are. Hi, Amy.
Hello.
How have you been? Oh my, we'll talk later.
Yeah, just say slide or something like that
Okay.
when you want me to change it.
Awesome. Okay, so again, I'm so happy to be here. This is always so exciting to get to talk with our chapters, and I wish I were there in person, particularly because it is still snowing here. You know, our wonderful forecast started with a few inches, or a few, I think it was 0.57 inches, and now we're up to, I'm sure, 5 to 6 inches of snow today. So I really wish I were somewhere else warmer, but I'm still happy to be here with all of you virtually. So I heard I have 10 minutes, so I'm going to run through this slide deck. So Amy, you can go to the next one. So as was mentioned, this was for those of you who were in Nashville, and gosh, it seems like forever ago, but it was like in 2021, coming back, you know, in person at the conference, right after, I guess, still during COVID, we now know, we presented and shared our 2030 vision for the organization. And from there, we immediately began implementing that vision with a 3-year strategic plan. Next slide. And that plan has 5 pillars. We did a lot of work to come up with these pillars, and to come up with the plan itself, working really closely with our chapters, surveying our members, and making sure that everyone's voice and perspective was part of the conversation to get us to this point where we are, that we ended up with for the strategic plan and the plan that we've been operationalizing for the last 2.5 years. So those pillars are community, connection, innovation, scale, and voice. You can actually find the strategic plan if you're interested, and if you haven't seen it recently, on our website. The wild thing to really sort of experience now is the fact that we're starting the process for the next strategic plan already. So it's been almost 3 years that this plan has been activated. And so as you can see, it's 2022 to 2024. And so it's time for us to be thinking about, what does the next iteration of that vision need to look like? And so we're in the throes of planning what that process will look like. I promise you that all of you and our members, our nearly 16,000 members, will all have an opportunity to offer their perspective, tell us what we've done well, what we could do better, and what they'd like to see us do differently moving forward. Next slide. One of the really important components that came out of both the strategic planning process and all the conversations we were having with our members and the work of the Climate Action Committee that we established a few years prior was this desire and frankly demand to create a climate action plan for the organization and for the profession, and specifically for the members. The Climate Action Plan is by and for landscape architecture, the whole community. And it was led by a 5-member task force chaired by Pamela Conrad, who's the founder of Climate Positive Design. Next slide. So we've long been committed to climate action. The organization has, long before we had this plan, but because it builds on a history of those initiatives in research, policies, advocacy, and commitments that ASLA and our members and all of you have had for years, decades even. Much of ASLA's climate action work started with the Sustainable Sites Initiative, which brought together landscape architects and scientists to focus on how to advance sustainable land planning and design. These documents were the beginning, but it's really our ASLA membership that has driven the development of this climate action plan as you see it today. And also, equally importantly, the Climate Action Field Guide, which is really the tool that members can use to get really good insight and again, resources that you can use in practice. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about what's in that Climate Action Plan and what that vision says for 2040 for us. So it says, we envision leveraging our collective power and growing new partnerships with industry partners that will help us achieve a zero-emission profession by 2040. Landscape architects, as you all know, are uniquely qualified design professionals who can bring all the pieces together and plan and design communities with communities to prepare themselves for a changing world. Next slide. Our vision for the plan is simple, but it's quite powerful. And it builds on our support for the International Federation of Landscape Architects Climate Action Commitment. By 2040, all landscape architecture projects will simultaneously achieve zero embodied and operational emissions and increase carbon sequestration. Next slide. They will provide significant economic benefits in the form of measurable ecosystems, services, health co-benefits, and green jobs. Next slide. Address climate injustices, empower communities, and increase equitable distribution of climate investments. Next slide. Restore ecosystems and protect, conserve, and enhance biodiversity. That's just a quick glimpse of the sort of top level goals of the plan. Please, I'm sure all of you have seen it. If you haven't, it also is available to all of you on our website. Both the plan and the field guide. I encourage you both to look at both and use them as your resources. I will tell you that I'm about to talk about COP28. I packed at least maybe 10 copies of the Climate Action Plan and field guide in my suitcase, which definitely put me over the weight limit for luggage. because I was handing them out and leaving them in places at COP at each of my panels for people to sort of and people were asking, can I have that? Can I have a copy of that? So I'm glad I had all 10 copies, and they all ended up outside of my suitcase and in Dubai at COP before I left. So who knows where they landed in the world at this point. So speaking of COP, we sent 3 in-person delegates to COP 28, which was in Dubai back in December. Myself, Pamela Conrad, who chaired the Climate Action Plan Task Force. And we also had a civil engineer join us. His name is Siddharth Naram, who works at Eastern Carolina University's Department of Coastal Studies. The 3 of us, in partnership with our really close partner, Architecture 2030, that's Lisa Richards, you see there standing in the middle of us, and Kachakorn Varakam, who also joined. She represents IFLA, and she's also an ASLA international member and landscape architect practicing in Thailand. We also had 8 virtual delegates who joined us online, including members of the Climate Action Plan Advisory Group and the National ASLA Biodiversity and Climate Action Committee. This is the second year the ASLA has been what they call an NGO observer to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, Conference of Parties, also known as COP. We became observers last year, just before COP. We couldn't make as much, commit as many resources last year because, frankly, the COP overlapped almost directly with our conference, so we just couldn't quite make it work. But while we were there, we made the case for maximizing nature-based solutions through landscape architecture strategies. That was our #1 mission. Next slide. And amid the discussions on how to move forward, one important thread kind of appeared: the need to scale up nature-based solutions more broadly. To help more communities become resilient to climate impacts, world leaders also saw and heard from us the need to set global goals on adaptation and leverage nature-based solutions to achieve them. This way, more communities will not only be protected from harm, but also experience the health, biodiversity, carbon drawdown, and economic benefits of nature-based solutions. At COP28, landscape architecture delegates, we all advocated for maximizing the benefits of nature-based solutions through design. Next slide. In Pamela's discussions, it's a great picture of Pamela at, I think, our 3rd or 4th panel. I can't remember which one it was. But in her discussions with policymakers and other delegates at COP28, she found that there was great support for nature-based solutions for all, the rights and wisdom of indigenous peoples, the use of bio-based low-carbon materials, and linking the carbon and biodiversity crises. There were also topics we included in the ASLA Climate Action Plan. All of these topics are in the plan, and we were talking about all of them and how they're interconnected while we were there at COP. It was great to see them recognized and the need for nature-based solutions recognized on the global stage. But so much more work is needed. Countries acknowledge fossil fuels are the problem, but it's not enough. The agreement did not include the phase-out commitment that is required to stay within the 1.5-degree threshold and avoid the worst effects of climate change. Next slide. Without a global adaptation strategy, there will be more severe loss and damages for communities worldwide. We need to raise more funds for measuring the performance of nature-based solutions. That was a key thing. I think in the subsequent years going back to COP, we're going to need to really be able to show to measure and show the outcomes and how different the outcomes can be when you incorporate nature-based solutions. Because people are now convinced about their benefits more than ever. But it's now back on us, landscape architects, to make them solid, measurable, and able to be financed. That was also a key thing that we talked about. Next slide. We were out in full force at COP, no doubt. And as a delegation, we made real progress by engaging and educating global policymakers, private sector leaders, and peer climate advocates about the value of nature-based solutions as critical components of any mitigation or adaptation strategy. And we will build on our engagement this year, providing more data on the environmental, social, and economic benefits of green infrastructure. I just simply call them the co-benefits. and emphasizing the strategic importance of including landscape architects in the global effort to stabilize our climate. Thank you. I think I was more like 13 minutes according to the recording time here, but
Thank you, Torey.
absolutely.
I think April will now present if you're ready.
Yes, there, I am muted. And thank you, Torey. It was so exciting to be a virtual delegate at for COP, even though it was like 12 hours ahead. I only got to catch one of the sessions in person, and it was one of Koch's water ones that talked about economic benefits and finances. Which seems like it might not have been fun, but it was actually very, very, very interesting. And one of the items that we were able to do to help ASLA during COP28 was to be part of the social media messaging and promote ASLA projects about nature-based solutions during that time. So it was very exciting to message what was going on with projects and nature-based solutions that landscape architects were doing. So that is definitely something that all landscape architects can be part of in the future to continue to showcase our work in that. So as Torey said, we talked about our climate action plan. It's part of that overall vision. And so as you can see, the 2022 to 2025, we are part of breaking it down to envision and looking at what we can accomplish with our actions and implementation. So I'm just going to go over a couple of things that we're doing to see what we can get to at 2025, and then we'll look forward to 2030 and so forth, so we can meet that vision in 2025. So next slide. The National Committee, Climate Action Committee, of which I've been chair of this past year and again this year, what we do is we provide leadership to ASLA. We provide input to ASLA leadership on strategies for communicating the role of landscape architecture, to what we can do with this implementation, and how we can provide on all the actions that we have to do. And I'm happy to say that the plan has 71 actions items to be completed by 2025, and 23 of which we have already completed. 23 actions are in progress, and 13 have entered the planning stage. And the way we have approached this as our committee is we have broken up into 3 subcommittees that centered on the 3 goals and 6 initiatives of the CAP. So which was practice, equity, and advocacy, and carbon drawdown, climate resilience, culture empowerment, climate agency, and climate leadership and global alliance. So by doing that, we are able to focus more completely on aligning exactly with what the climate action plan is oriented. So next slide. And if you were to look at it in one complete dashboard, this is in progress. The blue actually represents completed. The yellow is what is in progress. Red is reaching planning, and green is continuous. And next slide. And you can see this is kind of where we were in October. But this is a planning and development, and we just kind of want to see where we are in progressing through 2025. And we'll continue to upgrade this. We're hoping to have this on the website eventually so that we can see where we are in all these actions. And when as 2024 we're here, we are now going to be looking to making sure we can reach 2025. And we're also going to be then looking ahead in 2025 to see what our next goals would be to go to 2030 and so forth. Next slide. And then how do we communicate together? How do we connect with ASLA and with the chapters? So I thought this would be really important to communicate to our members. So here you have the Biodiversity and Climate Action Committee. We actually originally called the Climate Action Committee, and we really added biodiversity into the charge even more importantly this year. So we really wanted to communicate that it's biodiversity and climate action all together. So you can see here's our 3 subcommittees: carbon drawdown, leadership, and agency. I put ASLA over on the side because we're all part of ASLA. The Climate Leadership and Communications Subcommittee is also, we have a subcommittee within us that does the Climate Action Network. And this is where we have representatives from the chapter climate action committees, which is right under it, that filter into our quarterly calls. And this is where we do the information exchange with the chapters. This year, we've set up the 2024 calls to be in March, June, September, and December. We have not announced the exact date yet for March, but it will be out within the suit shortly, and we will let the chapters know and the representatives know. And this is where your representatives, you can even have more people from your the Climate Action Committee attend, but this is where we would relay information from ASLA into the chapters so that they have more resources that are available. But I'm going to tell you a few of them today. And then, of course, then your climate action committees will also have your information you can relay to your executive committee as well. So this is sort of how this relay of information to extend that network will exist. We also have someone from the executive committee of ASLA, which is from the vice president of professional practice, sits on our monthly calls as well. And then each of our subcommittees has additional monthly meetings where we do the work of our subcommittees. So, and that's how we get things done. And then we have our goals throughout, that we've set up to do our real work of the committees. Next slide. And so I'm going to just go through some news of some of the things that we've done through each of these committees this year and what we're working on now, just to give you an idea of how your committees can also help with what we're doing or understand what we're doing, and maybe even filter information to us when we do these information exchanges. So some of the things the Carbon Drawdown and Biodiversity Subcommittee did and announced where at the conference last year, there was a Bureau of Land Management rule letter that went out for biodiversity. They're developing an embodied carbon materials database. There's benchmarking reporting standards for biodiversity and carbon that are being developed. There's going to be a Biodiversity and Climate Action 101 webinar for landscape architects that is going to start in February of this year. I'm going to tell you more about that soon. And then they're going to be working on a new ASLA Biodiversity Policy and Research Grant, among other things this year. So next slide. And so in some of the ways we have been communicating with everyone, all of our members, are through the DIRT. There's been a lot of things and calls to action, like a biodiversity call to action that started in 2022. Next slide. We talked a lot about at the conference this past year on the different biodiversity actions that have been going on for 2022 and 2023 that also were related exactly to the Climate Action Plan for practice, equity, and advocacy. And so these are some of the things that are going on. Next slide, please. And we're even going to have at least 2 of the parts of the webinar series are going to be on measuring biodiversity and looking into biodiversity and equity issues as well. And there's also going to be an upcoming IUCN Commission and Convention on Biological Diversity that the subcommittee is looking into and being part of. Next slide. So a lot's going to be being done on biodiversity. And then last year, ASLA started getting together, just as Torey was talking about. There's been a lot of inter-collaboration with other entities such as AAA and ASCE, and a lot of it has been focused on carbon data collaboration. And next slide, please. And a lot of things in the DIRT. One has been with carbon data collaboration, and this is the ECHO project, of which Climate Positive Design, Pamela Conrad has been part of, and there are other people on our biodiversity subcommittee that are been part of this as well. And there will be a big report where there's been a lot of carbon data talk about sharing and developing a carbon data database, and there's more to come. The report out in late 2024 in that, so we're following that so that we can share things that have been found. Next slide. And one report that just came out was collaborating with industry partners on climate action and biodiversity. We released this at the conference, right before the conference. And this is was to help inform expo questions to our manufacturers and product vendors. And we thought that this guide would be not only valuable when chatting with our vendor community, but also for landscape specifiers to consider. And we also, it was a way to demand for the industry to help with developing climate sensitive products and life cycle assessment documentation, but it was also a good way to understand that our vendors and suppliers are also asking these same questions. So it was a good way to open the door to successful conversations between us and how do we change the industry together. So it's a great document. It's on our website. There's links. Getting the conversation started. We thought this was a good guide. Next slide. And we also developed a towards zero emissions business operation. So this is for any size firm dealing with, and also for whether you're small or large, and addressing the operational emissions of the work offices. So this is another helpful guide for thinking about the things that even if you rent. So it deals with all the questions that you can consider for all sides of the thing. But and really the goal is, as advocates for sustainable design and high quality public space, the ASLA Climate Action Committee gives us a place to collaborate, share, and make our profession stronger and more responsible. And we really feel this is greatest value of what a professional association can give, leveraging our collective strengths. So one of the things that we've all realized together is our collective strength is really makes us all stronger when we can share this information together. Next slide. Okay, so the Climate 101 webinar series, this has been started by the Biodiversity and Carbon and Biodiversity Subcommittee, but it really pulls all three of our subcommittees together. But the first four are going to be more on all of the things I just talked about, but we're going to bring climate equity and policy and all of those different topics into this whole website, this series, climate series. But the first one will be on February 20th, 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll be Introduction to Carbon in the Built and Living Environments. It should be really, really great. Chris Hardy is one of the co-chairs of the Biodiversity in the Climate Action Committee, and it'll be him with Conrad, who is the founder of Climate Positive Design, and Stephanie Carlove, who is on the Carbon Leadership Forum, who is also one of our allied professionals. And then in March, Mariana Rico, who is on your Climate Action Committee in Northern California, but also on our Biodiversity and Carbon Committee as well, subcommittee. So she's also on our national committee. So there's a liaison between the two already with having her on your team. So you'll have that. She will be on the March one, which is about decarbon design and best practice and strategies in the design phase by phase. So that will be a really interesting one as well. So we've been thinking through and developing these and finding, great speakers, and these will be very in-depth webinars to really go deeper dives than what so really you'll if you read the field guide and learn from that, you'll get the general overviews of the things that we're trying to develop further in these webinars. So, it's getting the deeper dive and really going to be just wonderful learning ways of, I would say it's more than a climate 101, but that's what we're calling it. But you can see these are the topics throughout the year, and we'll end up with urban ecology and biodiversity metrics because we're really developing those now, and we need the time to develop it. But then we have our industry partners who are really working through the industrial ecology and how do we work together with our partners and support zero emissions. So let's see, I'm gonna go, I'm not gonna do more, but stay tuned for more information on this. We really think that this is something that everybody wants to hear more of, and more education, beyond just waiting for, conferences and so forth. So it's really going to be exciting. Next slide. Okay, the Climate Agency and Community Resilience Subcommittee. They have been working behind the scenes on developing two big things, and one is creating a resource guide that identifies partnerships around 6 action areas on finding organizations that support and working to address climate inequities and increasing community resilience to climate impacts. So they created a draft report, and now they're going through with the ASLA staff and trying to find partnerships that we hadn't considered before that are both regional and local around the country. So they could use more feedback, I think, from all the different chapters and finding more local and different committees. So that might be something that ends up going to each of the climate committees in the chapters. One of the things, we don't have every chapter having climate committees yet. And so that's one of the things that's going to be our goal in the Climate Action Network, is to try to reach out to more chapters to get their representatives, and we'll be asking your chapter as well, maybe for feedback when that report gets released, to add to that report. And then we're also going to be developing climate engagement toolkit for social justice that relates to climate. Next slide. And so the resource guide, these are all the different action areas that they considered. Next slide. And then the engagement toolkit, this is straight from the field guide, what we were looking at and so forth. And then what they did, next slide, is they sort of explored different ways of how the different folks in that committee were doing it, through their firms, and they did some research and so forth. Next slide. And then they came up with a survey. And so they've started this survey, what do you need in a climate engagement toolkit? And these were the 4 questions that they've come up with. And then next slide. And they launched this at the conference this year, just 2 months ago. And if you have your camera, you can actually take a picture of this QR code, and you can do more, answer those questions and in the survey, and help to add this. This will also go out in either a DIRT article coming up, or through ASLA as a survey out to everybody. So we're working on that. We have a subcommittee meeting next week, and we're going to figure out exactly how to launch this again. But it was just launched at the committee, so I'm not sure if it still works. But anyway, so next slide. And then the Climate Leadership and Communications Subcommittee, what we do is we do the Climate Action Network, and we work with tri-ded chapters and getting connections. We also have done a lot of CAP and field guide presentations and outreach. We've created templates for that, and we're working with trying to develop and track CAP actions with our staff liaisons who help us and guide us every month as we develop all of these implementation tools and things. And then we're also doing some collaboration between practitioners and academia through ASLA. We've done some work with the research grants and development reviews that ASLA has been doing and helping to provide input on that. And we have been a sounding board for ASLA communications team with staff and doing with their social media campaigns and so forth. And we've done some ASLA website input and updates to CAP actions, and it's been very fun to see the feedback and all of the statistics that have come. We've been actually higher than 4% is what we just found out from all of the feedback that Jared gave us, who's head of the communications folks at ASLA, and we're doing really good. So, and especially with the nature-based solutions track that we've been promoting, so that's been great. Next slide. And a lot of this is through the DIRT. You can see a lot of articles. One of the projects has been with Ada Curtis and her folks down in Miami. I think Vice President Kamala Harris was down in Miami, and they got to promote a lot of projects down in Miami that they were doing for nature-based solutions with outlet flooding and so forth, and they got recognized. And and so forth, and it was even on the Weather Channel. So all of that stuff, making sure that that stuff gets connected, and whether it's the news, the Weather Channel, we blog it, we do things, and that's what ASLA is doing. And then when we help, we find things and we make sure that people hear about it and the projects are there and ready to go. So next slide. And here is what this is again another reminder of our quarterly calls with our Climate Action Network. This is how we've broken up the regions so far when we try to think of the regional connections between all of the chapters in the states. We're actually going to be connecting beyond our borders. This year, we've been talking with Canada and Mexico about having sort of a North American neighbors. They want to join us on our Climate Action Network calls. And of course, we have the global outreach. So we're going to try to figure out all of those moving parts as we move forward. We think that would be a great way to connect, more than just our chapters. But our goal this year is to make sure that every chapter has a climate action committee, and so that we can connect and we can all, as we create these resources, we connect together. And as we are developing resources with ASLA, your development of your resource to connect with our resources together. So this is a link right there. And I think Mariana may have been creating little links in the chat of things, but there's a chapter climate guide on ASLA's website. And I think the next page is some more links. Oh no, this is the webinar series. You can take a picture of this for now, but it'll be coming out in some kind of fashion from ASLA when we get to all of the dates. We've just had a lot of kickoff sessions this January on our subcommittee calls, and it's still not in the January, so they're still happening. But we're developing all this as we speak. And so another reminder. So this will be February through October. And then next page. I think I'm not done in my 10 minutes, but here are the links. And so we also have a big list of our committee accomplishments through 2023 and links to all of those documents that I showed you that we've created for you, the chapter guide, and then links to the Climate Action Plan and the field guide. So, and there they are. Phew, okay. I don't know if I lasted longer than 10 minutes, but there you go. And I think it's on to you, Amy, right?
Yes, it's on to me. So I am one of our Biodiversity and Climate Action Committee chairs. And our mission statement is to advance the role of landscape architects in promoting biodiversity and mitigating and adapting to climate change. And we foster opportunities for professionals to collaborate and share resources, experiences, and best practices within the broader community. What's coming up next today is just sort of an introductory presentation, what the bigger picture is, but we really want to hear from you, and we're really happy that so many people joined us today. So we really want to hear from you about how we can support you as our committee and you as landscape architects in really moving forward with this, and how can you implement it in your projects, and what information do you need from us? So coming soon, first steps we're working on is a web page on our chapter website, and that will have links to the ASLA documents, including the ones that April just mentioned, white papers, local links, local resources. And if you know of anything that we should include, please send us that information and we will check it out and put it up on that page. We also have a spring symposium coming up. It's going to be the first one for our chapter. So the open call should be coming soon. The theme is changing form and function of the Northern California landscape through a multidisciplinary lens. And we really want our members to participate and help to moderate discussions with experts from all of our collaborating disciplines, architecture, civil engineering, ecologists, and so forth. And we're looking for both conventional presentations and creative proposals about interactive and other innovative event formats. Anson, our chapter president, Anson Wong, is spearheading this. So you can reach out to any of us on the committee, but Anson and Laura certainly are the main contacts for the symposium. The last item that's coming up pretty soon is there's an advocacy workshop January 30th. And Justin, I think you're going to go a little bit more description on what it's going to be.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Justin Richardson. In addition to helping out on our local Climate Action and Biodiversity Committee, I serve on the CC ASLA, and that stands for California Council of ASLA. And just in case anyone on this call isn't familiar with it, it's a committee made up of a couple people from each of the 4 regional chapters in California. So, Sierra, Northern, San Diego, Southern. And what we do is we track the bills that are going through the state legislature, and we kind of see, well, which of these bills relate to landscape architecture in some way, which turns out it's a lot of them. And, it could be anything about climate or business related, contractual stuff, could be like public works kinds of things, or building and green standards, or things about licensure. So this webinar will be the end of the month, Tuesday, January 30th, and I will put a link in the chat and also my email address if you are interested, and you could contact me if you have any questions about it. So it's kind of be like a lobbying 101, you could think of it as. We'll learn how to build a relationship with the state legislatures, and we can work together to schedule meetings with them and kind of make our pitch for the profession. The focus also on this particular webinar is about licensure, because every 4 years we need the legislature to renew the whole concept of licensing landscape architects. So it's sunsetting, as they call it, this year. So that'll be a topic of focus on this webinar. But the way that the political machine works is valuable for all of the other topics, including anything about the environment and climate that we want to weigh in on. So I would encourage all of you to join this if you can. And let me say one more thing about it, and that is, I'll speak for myself, but since you're all on this call, maybe it applies to you too. I remember getting into this profession because I wanted to, be thinking big picture and give something positive back to society, and contribute in that way. But when you start to work in the profession, and you realize over time that you don't have as much power as you thought you had. A lot of the big decisions are made before you kind of even or know what your sort of site boundaries and constraints are, whether it's the physical limitations, regulatory things, or the local or state, any number of things. So this could be a way to get involved in the higher level decision making, the things that affect not only the profession, but our society at large. So welcome you to attend on the 30th, and I hope you can make it. Thanks.
So we have about a little less than 10 minutes left, or just about 10 minutes left. So I'd like to open it up to questions and discussion for all of us, so that we can better get to know what you're looking for from us as your local committee reps for biodiversity and climate action.
And feel free to post things in the chat too if there are topics you're interested in, and we want to know what people are excited about and things that we can get together on.
And certainly feel free to always reach out to us and send us information that we can help to provide more information on, or if you have a particular great resource, we can put it on the website.
I'd love to hear from people on the call about what you were hoping to get out of the call, why you've joined us. Everybody's eating lunch.
Well, we will continue to have further, this is just our first meeting, and we'll continue to have further meetings, especially as April's National Committee has produces more information. And so we'll delve into the thickets and the weeds as we get more information.
I think we'd like to invite critiques as well. If there's something you
Absolutely.
see here that's you think,
Can I
Yeah.
ask if people are excited about the Climate 101 series? Because we heard through ASLA that people were really interested in more detailed information and education.
Mariana just posted that she just recently relocated to the Midwest. Maria, sorry. Just recently relocated to the Midwest, and we would love to share with other regions. So yes, definitely.
So that one, I think that's just a plug for the Climate Action Network that April discussed, where as chapters are sort of getting off the ground, we can learn from one another and share resources and, programming, or invite people to webinars or, panels that might have, relevance outside of our specific region. So the Climate Action Network is a great opportunity, even if you've moved, to stay plugged in and get things going in your new chapter.
Yeah, there's such a wealth of knowledge and information in the Bay Area. I mean, we're so fortunate to have this hub of leadership. You really all are climate champions. But thank you, Justin and Amy and April and Tori. Yeah, Katrina, Bay Area is the best, and we miss you.
Yeah, when you think of like Pamela Conrad, she came from here, what she's gone on to do. John, you have a question? Raise your
I have
hand.
a question or a comment. First, this is really exciting, and I'm just so proud that ASLA is taking this on in such a well-articulated way. It's a lot more than just words. I'm really proud to be affiliated with that. And alongside that, one of the things I would say is I hope that we're able to retain the small picture as well as the big picture. So many of us just work with single family residences, and so much of the work that needs to be done needs to happen at a big scale, and yet at the same time, these are things we can be implementing at the small scale, yard by yard. And so it'll be great to see ASLA develop, maybe it's a parallel strategy or a parallel program that talks at that level. It's sort of the micro level.
I think that's a great idea. And it's not just small residential, it's, local public gardens and schools and everything. Yeah. But what do you do at the individual site level?
Because at the end of the day, these are individual people who will become our advocates, whether they're in our profession or not.
Yeah.
Again, thank you all so much for your efforts, though. It's really, really important.
Well, no, thank you for having Tori and myself from the national side today. But I'm always happy to also share with my local folks as well.
So Lauren had some comments in the chat. It's a really fantastic idea. See an industry red list with banned products.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know there was a group in the local Bay area that was teens, and they had the dirty 30 for makeup. They were all about makeup, and it's called the dirty 30. We could, I don't know, it's always a tough thing to shame people, but it would be good to at least know what, the toxics, like let's say with toxic goods, would be a way to do it.
Lauren, I think you're speaking, but you're mute.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Lauren. Microphone might not be working.
I think it's Lauren's microphone. Bummer.
Yeah, well, she just in the chat suggesting a stamp of approval, you know, rather than a shaming the manufacturers. That's really great.
One of the in the fourth or so, when we're talking about EPDs and things and certifications and stuff, that's one of the things we're working on with our industry partners is what are ways they can get more stamps of approval, because environmental product statements are actually declarations are hard to get because they're very expensive and so forth. It's one of the things we've been finding, especially from smaller vendors, which a lot of it turns out a lot of our products in landscape are actually small, considered small manufacturers. There are some bigger ones, of course, but that's one of the things we're going to be talking through with some of them, and they're trying to figure out what would be ways to go group together and so forth. But the certificates or stamp of approvals would be one way to go about that. And so that's one of the discussions from an industry-wide discussion where those reports that we put out, those are at least have some conversations that you can have with folks to begin those kinds of discussions that put it more on a conversation to at least get those things going with people. That I would offer as one way to start conversations with people on products. So, and there might be some things there, Lauren, that also might give you some ideas. And that's one thing to share. That could be something that the climate action, your climate committee can even think about as one of your things you might think about working on or contributing to this year, maybe.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on that, April, I think, you know, the idea inherent in there is also sort of our purchasing power as the ones who are specifying products. And certainly in the Northern California chapter, you know, there are so many of us that as a group, you know, I think there's definitely an opportunity to drive the marketplace a little bit on the EPD front and on, you know, having those transparent conversations, particularly if it's, you know, manufacturers and you know, other sources that are local, because that's also a big benefit, of course, as we all know, to specify local whenever we can.
Yeah, and you know, now one thing I'd like to throw out is to help with the Climate Agency and Resiliency Committee. There's so many planning folks in the Bay Area that and one place that we're really struggling with is on the equity side. And I was wondering if maybe there are folks in the Bay Area who would want to help with sort of that engagement tool, you know, from a climate point of view and an equity point of view of, you know, look at those questions and see if there's even more to think about. But it seems like we could do with some more input on that side. It seems to be the thing that's trailing the most in our climate action plan. It's a sensitive topic, and it's really hard to, you know, especially with the politics in the world these days too. But I think it's going to come from states like California and so forth that are grappling, you know, that do a much better job with those issues as a whole. That it might come from our states like California that can kind of push that a little bit more, because a lot of states are struggling with that. So I don't know, just push that to us to think about a little bit more, and maybe help out a little bit on that issue too, that topic. So, yeah. So maybe there's something we haven't thought about yet. We've got a good subcommittee that's really, gonna deep dive in this year in 2024, but that would be something I just would like to say, hey, you guys might want to dive a little bit with us. That would be great too.
Well, thanks again, everyone. Thank you all for being on this call, and I do hope you stay involved in the chapter. We have great leadership for our NorCal chapter. I'm really excited. Those of us who have, Amy and Laura and others who have been involved in April for a long time, this is really positive to see the direction that we're going locally and nationally, I would say. So so get involved, come to our events, talk to us, let us know what you need, what you want, especially on our Biodiversity and Climate Action Committee. We need you and we want you. So
Great turnout.
yeah, thank you all. Thank you all so much again for joining.